Every entrepreneur has one. The moment you decide to start your own business, your story begins. And if you're like most business owners, your plan and your reality can end up being miles apart. Welcome to PTC TV and our series entitled The Journey. Each week, we will be talking to business owners about their business journey. Our hope is that by sharing these stories, others may find understanding, inspiration, and the will to succeed. So let me ask you, what's your story? Welcome to The Journey, brought to you by Pull the Shoot. My name is Jeff Cecil. I'm your host. And today I'm here with Dr. James Allred with Wellskin Dermatology and Aesthetics. So James, welcome.
Well, thanks for having me here.
So before we get started, do me a favor, just tell us a little bit about your background, how you started getting into all this stuff.
Well, so I'm originally from Salt Lake City, Utah, and I come from a family of docs, but I thought I wanted to be a teacher at first. And so I actually taught sixth grade before I went to medical school. And there was always just kind of a yearning to use, I guess, that skill set of medicine, but have never really been just content being a physician alone. So I've always had an interest in whether it was developing devices, medical devices, which I did during residency, or starting various startups, or even this new clinic. So just always been kind of I think I've always kind of marched to the beat of a different drummer, and having an entrepreneurial pursuit is something that I've always, I think, kind of pursued.
That's great. So you taught school, but then so I'm assuming a little later, if you taught school,
yes,
got into the medicine thing?
Yeah, so I was about 4 years older than my classmates. Okay. So I ended up, after undergrad, ended up getting a master's in health education, and then teaching for a little bit, and coaching, and then eventually went into medical school. And I think it's actually helped me out a tremendous amount, having real world experience,
Sure.
work construction and all the different things. So I feel very, very blessed and grateful to be where it's air conditioned, and people are nice. So yeah,
I bet. So great. So how did you start your journey? So medical school, did you immediately go into this, or did you work for someone else?
No, yeah.
How did that start?
Yeah, so went to medical school, and it's funny. My uncle was an ER doc, and that's what I thought I wanted to do. So
Okay.
I got training as an EMT, and that's what I was convinced of. And my uncle said to me, medicine's great. Like, you're gonna love whatever you do, just as long as you don't do dermatology, because it's so boring. And then I was in my third year of medical school, and I was kind of disheartened because a lot of medicine, at least to that point, was fairly rote. There weren't these major mysteries that you'd see inside of a hospital. It was usually the same thing over and over again, kind of like a pneumonia or a COPD exacerbation or a GI bleed, just the same thing over and over again. And then my wife was going to deliver our second child at the end of my third year, so I needed an elective where I could be home at night. And so I randomly chose dermatology. I love the combination of the diversity, where you do have little kids, you have elderly people,
Sure.
you have surgeries, you have really complex mysteries, but then you also have things that are really difficult for patients to deal with, like bad acne, bad psoriasis, and our treatments are very effective at doing that. But then it also can create a lot of opportunities for creative pursuits, where since the organ, the skin, is so accessible, you can develop new devices very rapidly in kind of a cheap way. And so that was at the University of Utah, where I did my medical school training, then ended up at the University of Texas for my residency. And Austin was exploding at the time, and they created a new medical school. And my wife and I were broke. We're just eating hand to mouth.
Sure.
And so we ended up. I ended up getting an email one day from a clinic. It was actually in North Dakota, where they said they're going to pay you more money than you could possibly imagine. And so I was a second year resident, and I emailed them back and said, hey, I'm a ways out, but I'd be interested. And they said, no, they're interested in you now. And that really kind of gave me evidence that, especially in underserved areas, there's a high demand for this. And so I was able to negotiate a stipend. Ended up in southern Kentucky. We thought I was going to be there for a small while, and now it's 7 years later. And so I worked in a large multi-specialty group in Bowling Green, Kentucky, and I was able to cut my teeth, understand what it is to be in private practice, running your practice, but wanted the opportunity to kind of have my own deal, have a little bit more autonomy.
Okay.
And I saw this practice as a way of being kind of a launching pad for different pursuits, different technologies or business opportunities and things like that you just can't do inside of understandably a clinic where it's much more structured.
Sure. So you worked there, and then you decided to branch out on your own, and you launched Wellskin
About a little over a year ago.
Great. And how's it been so far?
Well, it's interesting. So I feel like I've done a fair number of difficult things in my life, both in an intense time period, and then also over time. I think my internship was a very stressful time, medical school, all that stuff. But it truly has not been anything more difficult than starting my own practice. and I don't think it's anything that's specific to starting, it has nothing to do with being medicine. It's just difficult starting and operating a small business. And so my respect for entrepreneurs who say, hey, there's an easy path, the safe path that I can go down, and I can just punch the clock. But then there's this other thing that I can go down and I can let's just roll the dice and see what happens. It's been really eye-opening to me about how many just courageous Americans there are that are willing to take their experience and their capital and their time and just say, hey, I'm going to give it a chance.
Yeah.
And I think so not a lot of docs do that, especially not anymore. And so it's been very educational.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, coaching for all the years that I've been doing that and stuff, I always work with startups a lot of times, and they always think it's going to be, well, I got the plan, I put together the business plan, it should be this easy.
Yeah.
And then they get 6 months into it or a year into it, and they're like, okay, that is as hard as I ever thought it was going to be and more.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's a thought that hey, I have the idea, I have the vision.
Yeah.
And then where's my cash?
Yeah.
It's like it doesn't happen that way.
Well, and there's so many moving pieces that you don't even think about, right? I mean, that's the killer.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny that if I could go back and write myself a 3-sentence email and have it transported back in time, right? It's just is that there's both of it is just very specific things, I don't hire, or work with this specific vendor, but part of it is just more general advice on how you should operate. So
yeah. So again, we got people that are watching us, and the idea behind the journey is to help other entrepreneurs or small businesses that are starting up. Give me a couple things that you think you might change or do different.
Yeah. So I mean, part of it is I'm very much into delegation. I understand where my skill set begins and where it ends. So I'm really good at popping zits. That's something that I can do all day long. But working on a spreadsheet or whatever, it's just okay, that's in this other person's spreadsheet, other person's skill set. So when I would bring on, say, a specific vendor and I like the person, I'm like, okay, all right, that's good. I don't need to interview 2 or 3 or 4 of this, and I certainly don't need a coach or someone who can help me vet, because I can read people pretty well, and that was totally wrong. There were times where I just needed to kind of pause and be like, hey, I need to take some time. This is a really critical hire decision. So somebody that I'm going to work with where. Some of it is doing contracts with insurance companies. That's a really an important thing, and that's just one example. Or your supplies, or accounting, all these different things. And it would have been better if I had not just trusted my own gut, but had gone and found somebody like Jeff and be like, hey buddy, I need you to be my backup on this, because I'm brand new at this, and I don't know what this necessarily means. So that would probably that would be a big thing. And I think one thing too is that I kind of tried to kind of boil the ocean, first, when I was just okay, I can do everything, from the get-go, but really, we just need to focus on this, on this smaller thing.
Yeah, well, I think it's cool that you identified that you can't have all the answers. I mean, you thought you did, but now a year in, you've identified, look, that was probably the wrong decision.
Yes.
And that is a huge mistake that a lot of small businesses make, is they're like, no, I'm going into this, I know exactly what I need to do, I know all the answers. And the reality is there's so many other things that are out there that you don't. And then the other part is you make decisions based on the fact that you think you have to make those decisions because there's only you.
Yes.
And the reality is, if you had someone else that you could be a sounding board, bounce it off of, like you said, pause, or as like we say, pull the chute.
Yeah.
That you'd be able to kind of look at that stuff and make better decisions.
Precisely. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. So, where did you come up with the name Wellskin?
So, it's actually interesting. So we initially were calling our clinic Access Dermatology Clinic because that was something that's really important to me, was just accessibility, getting people in to see it. And then we brought on an awesome new office manager who I know you know, Neil Bloomington. And she said, I like the name, but I think that if you're thinking about also aesthetics and moving into this market on the outside of Nashville, that may not play as well in that. And then we had a marketing person who we worked with, and we batted around different ideas, and he actually came up with Wellskin, and I loved it because it really actually, to me, surmises kind of what our intent here is, which is just to be a little bit different. We're not just we're not just dermatology. We also focus on the aesthetic side, but also on wellness in general. So getting down to a root cause of health and illness. And it's been great. And so that was an example of where somebody came in and they, this phrase is sometimes used, which is they said, "Hey, your baby's ugly. Your name kind of stinks." And so I was like,
in a very nice and gentle way, right?
Yeah, and you're just like, it's like,
that's great.
I came up with that name, but if you think that changing this core identity, this brand is going to help us be more successful, like, of course, yes,
let's do it.
Let's do it. Yeah.
That's great. So your journey up to now, it's been a year. What's one of your biggest challenges? I know you said you'd go back and alter yourself or tell yourself, but what's one of the biggest challenges that you've kind of faced, you think, in the last year?
I think probably one of the biggest challenges, and this is medicine in general, is just cash flow.
Okay.
Which is, if I do something today, then I may or may not get paid 3 months later. Okay. And so there's just huge delay, and oftentimes payers will look and be like, I don't really like the way that you coded that thing, so we're not going to pay you. And then you do that in a time where inflation is going through the roof, and then there's different like kind of payer contracts and different things like that. So I think cash flow has been difficult because you want to invest in what you're doing, and you want to pay yourself, and then you also want to hopefully have some time where you can kind of recharge. But that's probably been the most challenging thing.
And what's one of the things that you've been most excited about over the last year?
Well, I guess it's kind of the same thing, which is the growth, and it's just to see from right where we're sitting here. A year ago was just gravel, and just cement, and now we have not only like the physical structure, but you see the people interacting and laughing. I don't know if noticed when we came in, people are joking around and just kind of independent of the walls and the structure here, but just kind of that human interaction that happens. You're like, oh, like we built that. And that's cool. And then when you're interacting with patients and they come in and say, hey, we really like the way that this is set up, or I really had a great experience here. It's really meaningful.
That's great. I love it. So what's the next step for you? What's the future hold?
World domination. So this is a base.
I love it.
No, so I think the next step is kind of consolidating. Like we're in this growth phase, and then what we need to do is just take what we've made here and just make it as best as we possibly can. So part of that is looking at our what we're doing on the medical side, and what are those services that we can do a really good job with, probably bringing on an additional provider, and then looking at our aesthetics, and that's actually what we were just planning last week, is looking where our revenue is. So the way that I did our aesthetics was, I wasn't sure what this market was going to bear, because I'd never been here. So we just bought one laser system, and started to look good. We got a good hit, and we had the prerequisite kind of like Botox and whatnot. And so then we got the next system. Hey, and that did went pretty well. And so just kind of do that in kind of an iterative fashion. And now I feel like we've actually done very, very well with our aesthetics. And so now we can kind of go full bore into that and get all the all the equipment that would be expected at a location like this, and then also the personnel as well.
That's great. Awesome. Good. Well, hey, James, thank you for your time. We really appreciate it. We're excited about what you're doing here. By the way, you're in 4 places, right? If I remember right?
Yeah. And so we're here in Gallatin, just outside of Nashville,
Right.
up in White House, and then also we're up in Kentucky is where I
You got 2 in
practice.
Kentucky, too.
Yeah.
So great. Well, congratulations. It's been
thank you.
an exciting journey. Thanks for
Yes.
sharing your journey with us. We appreciate that.
Well, thank you for having me. Yeah. Thank you for the
And to our
conversation.
viewers, we hope that you're enjoying this series, and we're excited. If you have any questions, please reach out. Visit our website, pulltheshoot.net. We look forward to hearing from you. In the meantime, stay safe and be healthy.